Something in Common, the Common Core Standards, and the Next Chapter in American Education. Written by Robert Rothman. Robert Rothman, a longtime education writer, has written extensively on standards and assessment. Formerly the editor of the quarterly Voices in Urban Education, Rothman is a frequent contributor to the Harvard Education Letter and is currently a senior fellow at the Alliance for Excellent Education, a Washington-based organization that has been involved in the Common Core Standard effort. On June 2, 2010, in Suwanee, Georgia, at the Peachtree Ridge High School, the standards were unveiled. A group of public officials met to reveal a set of common standards for English language arts and the mathematics. They discussed the unique aspects of the standards, their content, the research behind them, and the goal of common standards across state lines. This took place in Georgia to signal that the standards were not a product of the federal government, rather a state-run effort. The book also examines the role of standards in education and the research on the impact of standards in the classroom and schools. It shows possible reasons previous standards failed to lead to improvements and how the Common Core state standards can potentially avoid those problems. As quoted from the reading, the goal is to create a common set of high expectations for students across the country. The Common Core state standards reflect what can come from cooperation to improve student achievement. As with anything, the standards have their limitations. First, they are limited to English language arts and mathematics. They do not address all the knowledge and skills students are expected to demonstrate to succeed after high school. Second, the standards represent academic competencies. These competencies are critically important, but they do not represent all of the abilities students need in order to succeed in college and the workplace. And lastly, the standards are only a few steps towards school improvement. Even the most passionate advocates of standards would agree that the statements of expectations are hollow, without efforts to ensure that the teachers are prepared to teach to the standards and that students receive the support they need to learn what the standards expect. A quick initiative to adopt the standards made for them to represent high aspirations. New standards were aimed at making sure that all students, regardless of their backgrounds of life aspirations, would have the same educational opportunities. The state was to develop ambitious goals for students that spelled out the knowledge and skills that all students should have and to align all aspects of the system, including curriculum materials, assessment, and professional development around those goals. The book goes on to discuss historical context for the development of the Common Core. With George Bush Sr. pledging to become the educational president, he announced the 6 national goals in his State of the Union message in January 1990. He pledged by the year 2000 that every child will enter school ready to learn. The high school graduation rate will increase to at least 90%. All children will leave grades 4, 8, and 12 having demonstrated competencies in challenging subject matter. The United States will be the first in the world in mathematics and science. Every adult will be literate, and all schools will be safe and drug-free. Introduction to the Common Core.
Like it or not, life is full of measuring sticks. How smart we are, how fast we are, how well we can, compete. But up until now, it's been pretty hard to tell how well kids are competing in school and how well they're going to do when they get out of school. We like to think that our education system does that, But when it comes to learning what they really need to be successful after graduation, is a girl in your neighborhood being taught as much as her friend over in the next one? Is a graduating senior in, say, St. Louis as prepared to get a job as the graduate in Shanghai? Well, it turns out the answer to both of these questions is no. Because for years, states have been setting different standards for what students should know and be able to do at each grade level. That's making it too hard to know if our kids are really doing well enough overall, and if they can really compete for a job someday. What we really need are clear goals. That's where the Common Core state standards come in. They're like a total sea change in education. Consistent, strong, clear benchmarks for English language arts and math. Here's how it works. You can think of kindergarten through 12th grade like a giant staircase. Each step is a skill your child needs to learn before stepping up to the next one. But right now, too many kids aren't really confident with like 2 plus 2 before they have to move on to 2 times 2. We need more focus on the skills that help them move up the stairs, or they can slip up and fall behind. And there's another problem. What if everyone's stairs were made at different heights? Well, here we go again. They are. So, a boy in Seattle who's rocking an A in English literature could be getting a C on his Chicago friend's staircase. Oops. We need to create consistent steps in education, too. So first, each standard creates a landing on the staircase, a stop along the way as your child heads toward high school graduation. Each stop is a chance for every parent and teacher to focus on the skills their students are supposed to know at that step, no matter the zip code, language, or race. And more importantly, each standard makes sure all students are learning what they need to know to get to graduation and beyond. Because something like counting to 100 leads to understanding dollars and cents, which eventually leads to understanding how to manage a budget. Secondly, the standards are consistent from school to school, and they match up against international standards too. Now we know how we're doing compared to just about everyone. So even though local communities will still design their own curriculum, with the same rules, everybody can compete on the same kind of staircase. But standards aren't learning. That's why we need teachers, parents, and students to help make that happen by working together to help kids meet these standards. The world's getting more and more competitive every day. But now, when our kids get to the top of their staircase, they can have way more options on where their life goes from there. Clear goals, confident, well-prepared students. That's the Common Core state standards.
Introduction to Race to the Top and the need for the Common Core.
We need to teach them that success is not a function of fame or PR, but of hard work and discipline. Our schools share this responsibility. When a child walks into a classroom, it should be a place of high expectations and high performance. But too many schools don't meet this test. That's why instead of just pouring money into a system that's not working, we launched a competition called Race to the Top. To all 50 states, we said, if you show us the most innovative plans to improve teacher quality and student achievement, we'll show you the money. Race to the Top is the most meaningful reform of our public schools in a generation. For less than 1% of what we spend on education each year, it has led over 40 states to raise their standards for teaching and learning. And these standards were developed, by the way, not by Washington, but by Republican and Democratic governors throughout the country. And Race to the Top should be the approach we follow this year as we replace No Child Left Behind with a law that's more flexible and focused on what's best for our kids.
Arne Duncan, Secretary of Education. We need tests that measure whether students are mastering complex materials and can apply their knowledge in ways that shows that they are ready for college and careers. We need tests that go beyond multiple choice, and we know that these kinds of tests are expensive to develop. It will cost way too much if each state is doing this on its own. Robert Rothman, author of Something in Common, The Common Core Standards, and the Next Chapter in American Education.
That are in place now don't measure these deeper learning competencies. It was a study by the RAND Corporation that looked at 17 state tests that are representative of most of the states and found that only a tiny percentage of the test items in mathematics measured higher level thinking at all. A higher percentage in English language arts, primarily because of writing, but still the vast majority of test questions measured very low level knowledge and skills.
Developing new assessments. PARCC and Smarter Balanced, two consortiums of states, were charged with creating more critical forms of assessments. Although the groups were in some way competitors, they worked closely together to develop their tests. PARCC received $170 million, and Smarter Balanced received $160 million to develop the test. Both forms of assessment involve 21st century thinking and testing skills. For example, Smarter Balanced tests would be administered via computers and be computer adaptive, meaning the test would adjust itself to the test taker's performance and abilities. Assessment examples. The following examples are examples of critical forms of assessment by Smarter Balanced. What the Common Core classroom looks like. Challenges and obstacles ahead.